Hello, good morning. My name is Von Anthony Torrio, and in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about a topic that is an important topic in assessment, specifically in test construction, entitled Creating Table of Specifications. Before I formally dive into discussing the idea of tables specification, we'll first talk about the cognitive process dimensions, which basically is an important aspect of creating table of specifications. Originally, the concept of the cognitive process dimension was explored in detail by an educational psychologist in the person of Benjamin Bloom. Benjamin Bloom classified the taxonomy into six levels. And the acronym that I'd used to classify the six levels of the cognitive domain uh, to be Kikapanse, or that's K, C, up, and SE. And that stands for K is knowledge, C is for comprehension, up is for application, N is for analysis, S is for synthesis, and of course, E is for evaluation. The idea of Benjamin Bloom was actually published in 1956 in a book entitled Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, Handbook 1, Cognitive Domain. In 2001, the idea was revised by Anderson and Krathwohl. From the original Kikapanse, it now became Uruapan Ek, with R representing remembering, U is for understanding, up for applying, and for analyzing, E for evaluating, and C for creating. In the original publication of Anderson and Krathwohl, we can better understand the sequence of this classification system of the cognitive domain using the following figure. You notice that remember or knowledge is at the base or at the lowest level of this particular illustration. And remember is described by the New World World Encyclopedia to be exhibit memory of previously learned materials by recalling facts, terms, basic concepts, and answers. It includes knowledge of specifics, knowledge of ways and means, and knowledge of universals and abstractions. For the second level in the cognitive domain, understand, it's described by the same reference, New World Encyclopedia, to be demonstrative understanding of facts and ideas by organizing, comparing, translating, etc. And it includes translation, interpretation, and extrapolation. The next level in the classification system is apply. And according to the same reference, the New World Encyclopedia, using new knowledge, solve problems to new situations by applying acquired knowledge, facts, techniques, and rules in a different way. Finally, you notice that the remaining three levels are actually of the same location in this particular illustration. For some references, the classification system ranks the three other levels to be of sequence, being creating is the highest level. But in this illustration by Anderson and Krathwohl, analyze, evaluate, and create are actually of the same level. So analyze, as described by the same reference, the New World Encyclopedia, is examine and break information into parts by identifying motives or causes. And it includes analysis of elements, analysis of relationships, and analysis of organizational principles. The next is evaluate. With evaluate, the big idea here is judgment, making judgments about information, validity of ideas, or quality of work. And it includes judgments in terms of external and internal evidence. And finally, the highest level in Bloom's taxonomy, or in this case, in the revised Bloom's taxonomy by Anderson and Krathwohl, um, with the same levels as analyze and evaluate, is described in relation to its original term synthesis, compile information together in a different way by combining elements in a new pattern or proposing alternative solutions. And it includes production of a unique communication, production of a plan, or propose a set of operations. And in classifying the set of objectives, we can actually consider dividing the levels of the cognitive domain into two for us to be able to simplify our table of specifications. We can cluster the levels to HOTS and LOTS. So basically, LOTS or lower order thinking skills are skills classified from remember to understand. So basically, the two lowest levels in the cognitive process dimension. And the remaining four are classified as higher order thinking skills. And you'd notice that apply is separate from the remaining three. So which basically means that under HOTS, apply could be considered to be of lower level. And the remaining three are, of course, higher levels of the higher order thinking skills. To better understand the idea of the cognitive process dimension, there are references that I'll be including in the description link of my presentation, which includes the following. The first reference is from Intel. It gives examples of objectives classified to the different taxonomy of the cognitive domain. The second reference is from UC Davis. And in this illustration, basically this is what you'd be able to find through the link that I'll be sharing in the description box of my presentation. Essentially that illustration, which showcases the different levels of the cognitive process dimension along with the different verbs and the identifying terms that that will make it easier for you to classify whether objectives are falling under a certain level of the cognitive process dimension. And then finally, the last reference is from the Center for Teaching Excellence of the University of South Carolina, and it gives action verbs identifiable to each of the cognitive process dimension, as well as the recommended assessment formats, which is interesting for us who would like to create examinations. So say, for example, if it's the lowest level, which is remember, true or false might be the best format that you can consider for this one, or some others, of course, that you can find in other references, such as multiple choice questions. And once again, the link to this particular reference or all three references that I've mentioned will be included in the description box of this particular presentation. Now, let's get to the main topic of this presentation, which is basically table of specification. Let's initially define what tables of specifications are. So basically, according to the University of Kansas, table specification is a two-way chart, which is basically a table which describes the topics to be covered by a test and the number of items or points which will be associated with each topic. It includes the following: list of course objectives, topics covered in class, and time spent per topic. Other tables of specifications actually include more details, but basically all these three elements are crucial in defining your table of specifications. According to the same reference, the University of Kansas, there are three steps that we can follow in creating our table of specifications. The first of which is to choose the measurement goals and domain to be covered. In the context of the Philippines, for example, we can create a table of specifications for a test considering a particular quarter or grading period. And we consider the different topics and the domains that are covered in that particular period. The second one is to break the domain into key or fairly independent parts: concepts, terms, procedures, applications. And in this case, in our context in the Philippines, we can consider competencies, and we can also subtask and identify objectives that can be associated with the different topics. And then finally, we complete our table of specifications. Now, I created a sample template for table of specifications, which has 10 columns. The first column is where you'll be writing the general topics that will be covered for the particular examination you are to create. The next two columns are for the competencies or the objectives, or basically what you have subtasked from the competencies. The fourth column is for time allotment, and the next four columns are for the item distribution. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, the classification of objectives, classification of the test items you are to create will be as simple as telling whether it's lower order thinking or higher order thinking. So if it's under lower order thinking skills, your classification could either be remembering or understanding. And if it's higher order thinking skills, the remaining four, so applying, analyzing, evaluating, or creating. You'd also notice that in this case, the three higher level or the highest levels in this case are actually clustered as one. That is, it's only column number 8 in this particular template. So if whether it's analysis, evaluation, or create, you will put it under the 8th column. And the 9th column is for the number of items. And finally, the 10th column is the percentage of item distribution. So say, for example, if you have 100 items in all, and there are only 5 items for a particular topic, so that's 5 out of 100, or that is 5%. And here are the references that I use for this particular presentation. Thank you.